All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of Loaded Is Blue podcast. As your host, Brandon Joe, my co-host Nick Dan on PTO, which, gonna be honest, didn't even know we had, but apparently he submitted it and it was approved. So Nick and I holding it down, but I'm not gonna complain, Nick, because I've taken my fair share of breaks already this summer.
You sure have. I forgot that you were the host of the podcast here for a minute, but you're back. You entered back in, you kicked the door down, you said I'm here, and so no more Dan and Nick Save the World episodes for a little bit. Brandon and Nick back in the saddle because there's a lot of news going on at Chelsea right now. I don't know if you've been able to keep up, but in addition to the 145 transfers that the club has currently going on, the club has acquired a new piece of what they have termed the multi-club model. And so we are going to be talking to French football expert Johnathan Johnson about the implications of the Racing Strasbourg acquisition as part of the model. I will not do that accent again, promise, and kind of take you on a bit of an educational journey in this one to find out about all the different implications of the acquisition into the model and who Strasbourg are as a club, which I think is really important, and a lot of interesting history there as well. So hopefully this is informative, Brandon. We can get people on a level playing field as they enter into their new favorite Ligue 1 team for next year.
Absolutely. I've started to lean heavy into this. I've changed my Twitter Avi to the Strasbourg logo. My new handle name is Blueco shareholder. So whatever you need, I'm here to help, right? I took some time off. Twitter, I needed to decompress after the season. I am back and ready to shithouse. So this is really cool. Not only we're just going to kind of touch on things, we would say there's an interview, JJ from CBS coming in later, expert, right? Ran us through top to bottom. Everything's going to go.
Accent is on point.
Oh yeah. He's a Villa fan like Matt Law, and I'm like, I didn't know you guys could do that. So good on him. But very informational, like Nick said. Really just want to kind of just present what is out there to try to get us headed in the right direction. One of many. Blueco. I mean, we can even just start there. I mean, Nick, the official umbrella org has been announced. It has been released. I even saw on Twitter that it sounds like they're filing paperwork that I think Chelsea will eventually be owned by Blueco potentially as well. They're going to kind of shift some things around, but there's been, I think, the multi-club model was discussed even boldly at the conference last year. This is step number one to like make it concrete and real. Obviously, there's been a lot of other clubs linked, which we'll get talked to, but the first domino has fallen. France being a hotbed of young talent. There's some strategic reasons why you want to go there, but Blueco is announced to the world, and they kind of gave their statement here, right? And talk about the why, right? I mean, the high-level strategy behind this makes sense. They want to be competitive in England, in Europe, long term, and see the acquisition of a Ligue 1 club to be very important in their future. They're very specific on where they want these satellite clubs, if that's how we are gonna say it.
There's no nice way to say that, right? Yeah,
no.
Right. And I think Johnathan actually does a really good job of talking about that from like an implication standpoint. So stick around for that. But the Blueco statement says this strategic investment would further our presence in European football alongside our ownership of Chelsea. We believe it would create huge opportunities to share knowledge and expertise. Again, we have a ton of reporting that's happened from Nizar Kinsella and others that we'll talk through here. But I just quickly want to read through the statement that Racing Club de Strasbourg Alsace, which is just a phenomenal name of a club, they put this out the other day. The agreement would mark a new chapter in racing's history as the ownership consortium commits to accelerate sustainable investment in the club's growth, including the first teams and in the academy and the women's team. With the project implemented by Mark Keller, who would remain president of the club, supported by the current management team. He says, this is an important day for racing. It's something my shareholder friends and I have been thinking about for the last 2 years. We built a club that's healthy at every level and well managed. Although there was no financial urgency, we were aware that we had reached the ceiling of our model and that we wanted to continue driving racing forward and projecting into a new dimension. We necessarily needed it accompanied by a solid structure of capable supporting our development and our ambition. I'm therefore delighted of the perspective to welcome the new strategic investor with whom we will accelerate the club's ambition and build the racing of tomorrow. And look, it's accompanied by a little bit more from Blueco. It's an honor for us to be a part of this historic club. We're committed to preserving the heritage of racing and are focusing on working closely with Mark and his management team to continue the excellent work they've been doing, the strategic investment, further our presence, yada, 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 right? So this is actually a really interesting kind of co-statement. And there's been a lot of reporting along the way, Brandon, that, Chelsea were looking to acquire a part of a club. And it turns out that they've acquired nearly 100% of Strasbourg, which is pretty incredible when you consider all of the names in French football that Chelsea were after over the last year.
Absolutely. It's so I don't know. I guess to me, I'm kind of surprised, right? And you think about all the things that this ownership group is juggling. Adding this to the list is no small feat, And I mean, I know you and I don't play at this level, but I also think of you got to have a macro picture, right? And you got to think Bully had this vision and Igbali a part of their strategy deck before they even got to Chelsea, right? And it's how are they balancing all these things? You negotiating with agents for players is one thing. Could you imagine negotiating with owners and boards for actual clubs? You would assume there's a lot more paperwork and legal requirements to get into there. But they are starting to very eloquently lay down the really big vision that they have for this. They don't want England dominance. They kind of want world dominance. And you're all right, we're that guy. We're the bad guy now. It's official. We're buying clubs up, and it's very aligned to the Man City play. And I would even say it'll blitz the RB play pretty quickly because I feel they're a little bit limited.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So Johnathan Johnson goes through and he actually mentions very early on in our interview, he's giving the league on perspective and the Strasbourg perspective, but he said that there's been a ton of American investment in Liga, and it's not really gone that well. If you look at a bunch of different examples across the landscape, and I think that goes for, not only Liga as well, but I think their strategic imperative is different than, some others that might come in. And you look at this, and I mean, I think it, as an implication, it helps Chelsea keep up with the Man Cities of the world, right? And even the Brightons of the world who have invested in a Belgian club as well, to have the best chance for success, right? Not only in terms of how do loans work, but overall pathways. And I think that this is incredibly important. And I know that there are a bunch of Chelsea fans out there who are looking at this and going, I don't feel like I know my club anymore. There's so much change happening. I agree that there is a lot of change happening. I think it's just maybe a bit of an overcorrection to where the market is heading in a very quick amount of time, Brandon. And I think that is the reason why you're going to see not only investments in Strasbourg, but also other clubs that we'll talk about at the end of the show as well. This is a strategic imperative that if you don't have a state-backed football club, you kind of need to do. And even if you do have a state-backed football club like City, they're still doing anyway.
Yeah, they are definitely maximizing their impact on it. So, look, I think it's interesting also that they got almost 100% of the club, right? This isn't a minority. This isn't a 51%. This is 90+% ownership, which is important detail in this. There's no confusion who owns or runs the club. So whatever happens, right or wrong, It's with Blueco. As we talk about Naz's article that you brought up, fantastic. We will tweet it out if we haven't already. He kind of goes through the overall implications of this. I think he gives a really, really good breakdown. Obviously, you all know that we love Naz. Step one, there's been a lot of limitations to the loan army, right? That was Chelsea's OG play to really ruin the world of football, was loan upwards of 40 players.
That was ruining football version 1.0. Do you remember that way back in the day?
The Emanalo trick up his sleeve, right?
Actually, was that 2.0? Was I think buying players?
Abramovich just splashing cash at people.
That was
probably
1. We're on either 3.0 or 4.0 now. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm leaning towards 4 or 5. I think I think once you see Nicholas Jackson's announcement, that might ruffle a ton of feathers. I'll tell you offline. So it's going to give access to players from Europe. And we talk about Andre Santos not being able to get a work permit because in England, the requirements are so strict with Brexit and things like that. Now you have a gateway into Europe. And once a player gets to a top 5 European country, getting them into England is much, much easier. So that's a big one. The ability to sign under 18s from the continent, it will be opened up. And then the ability to put them in a league that they can develop and grow in a very healthy environment, I think is some of the really, really high ones. Obviously, League One is a lower level than the PL, Nick, but that's where we see some of the best young players develop, Eden Hazard, and then go to big clubs. And it seems we just picked up Body Shield from there. No one needs to know how much young talent is in France.
Well, all you have to do is listen to one episode of Le Tinkerman, and Seb will give you about 190 names of young French talent that has either come from France in their footballing infrastructure or come from any of the number of countries that have an easy pathway for players to get into French leagues. And so it's a huge opportunity from a scouting perspective to figure out not only those in and around Strasbourg, but to set up scouting networks that kind of extend deeper into French football with players who may be a level or two below Chelsea, but who have the potential to accelerate and grow into Premier League caliber players. And that's just scouting, right? It's just a bit of a different approach than maybe Chelsea have done before, where they've scouted and sent the players back out on loan. Now you have a club where if you scout them and they're at a certain price point and they fit within your budget, you have a club where they can go and develop, and that's under your jurisdiction and ownership to set up properly. So I think that is a critical part of this. The other part, which we will dive into a little bit after the ad break here, is this club is well run. So Strasbourg is an incredibly well run club. They've been compared to a Brentford, right, within French football, which I think is exciting. But their director, Mark Keller, who Johnathan Johnson will tell you all about in the third section of this show, is about as highly regarded as one can be, could potentially help run French football as a federation in the future. And I think, Brandon, when you look at which clubs you're investing in as a part of the multi-club model, this is a perfect example, right? A club with a ton of room to grow, right? Maybe don't have the cash flow necessary to make everything that they want come true, but a club that's been operated in a smart and savvy way, a club that has history to it, a club that has a really excited fan base around it. It's not build a club in FIFA, right? This is a club that already has history, tradition, and infrastructure that may just have a cash flow issue and a stadium infrastructure issue that Chelsea and Blueco can help fix, and that could potentially elevate them as well, which would be great for everybody.
Right. They have one of the lowest debts in France, which, let's be honest, at this point, picking up a club with low debt is hard to find. And that just makes life easier. They have a very, very highly regarded general director, Mark Keller, which we'll talk a lot more about. And they went from ruins to a 25 or a 25,000 seat stadium and back into competing, and not quite on Europe's door, but there are some parallels to Chelsea. You think back to the early 2000s when like the club were on the brink of bankruptcy, and thank God we got into Champions League and Abramovich came in. They have their own kind of narrative story that is similar to it. And as Bully and Iqbali have lined out about their data-driven approach and collaboration, they're kind of doing it in their own small world already. So again, like the overlaps and the consistencies are there, which is awesome, right? And the fact that their scouts have been crushing it, and their location as well, Nick, which we can touch on, is peak to be able to cross borders into other countries and go all the way into Paris, or Paris, as some of our American friends would know. They check a lot of boxes, right? And I think it is fair to say they weren't their number one choice, but it starts to feel like it's a pretty dang good plan B when it's all said and done. And we've got a lot of articles and things to kind of connect those dots.
Yeah, I mean, as far as anyone's concerned, this is plan A, right? It's the first part of the adventure that Chelsea have been on, as it pertains to kind of this new future that comes through. And I think the last part I'll make before we head to part two is, I think for those who are, again, maybe a little bit, it's too much change too quickly. Their supporters feel this way too, right? I think there have been kind of protests and stuff like that. JJ brings up a really interesting point that no one wants to be the second or third club in a multi-club model. Everyone wants to be the top dog. And, unfortunately for Strasbourg, that's not going to happen with Chelsea Football Club being a part of the infrastructure and being a two-time European champions and multiple-time Premier League winners and one of the biggest brands in world football. But there's a ton of good, I think, that will come out of this as we get to learn a little bit more about the club in part two. And so, again, it's not just the anxiety from Chelsea supporters going, what is happening to my club? I think, racing supporters are feeling the same sort of anxiety, but I think the plan is savvy from what we can tell, and the investment will hopefully be like a rising tide that lifts all boats. So that's kind of the last piece I would make there.
All right. Well, a lot more to come, but we're going to take a first ad break. When we get back, we're going to learn about Strasbourg and kind of just walk through their history. So thank you to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right. Before we get into the history of Strasbourg and kind of, who they are, we're taking this show on the road, Nick.
Damn right. For those who have already signed up via our Eventbrite links to the live podcasts in Raleigh-Durham on the 18th of July, in Philadelphia on the 21st of July, in Atlanta on the 25th of July, and DC on the 29th of July, you guys are already legends. We're close to selling out on all of these different events. We kind of set a cap of about 200 people per event. DC is leading the pathway so far. That's not to say that they'll always be in first place, but a huge reaction out of DC at the Astro Beer Hall, which looks incredible, by the way. So shouts to Allison and everyone who's organizing the DC event. We have the Atlanta group in second place so far. We're going to be at the Fido Irish Pub in Buckhead for that one. Very much looking forward to that. Philadelphia, huge reaction out of those guys. They're really excited, and that's a Friday night special. I'm very excited about that one at that live show. And then, of course, our friends in Raleigh-Durham at the My Way Tavern. We are so excited to be on the road. We have some big plans. We're going to have our journalist friends as guests. We're going to do some fun things. So please go to our social media pages, sign up. The tickets are free. We just want to get a sense of how many people we can expect to join us at any given time. We're, of course, trying to avoid any conflicts along the way with club-sponsored events and everything like that. We don't want to be counter-programming. We want to be complementary to everything that's going on, both with the supporters groups and with Chelsea. And so we tried to find sweet spot times for all these different events. Please go sign up. It means the world to us. The reaction's been fucking incredible so far. So thank you, and let's sell these bad boys out and have some awesome times.
All right, so back to Strasbourg. The team's full name, right? Racing Club de Strasbourg Alsace, a French professional association. Look, you guys are going to get what you get from me. I'm happy to have Seb back on.
The Alsace.
The French pronunciation. Here's the problem.
No.
If we say it the French way, no one's even going to be able to understand it anyways because that's not our thing. How about this?
Feel very much like Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, yeah. Brad Pitt, for sure. That's actually a great option for that one. I'm open to Zoom lessons. Let me know. Founded in 1906. They've had their professional status since 1933, and they're obviously currently in Ligue 1, top tier of French football. They've definitely had their ups and downs, to say the least, Nick. Got 15th in the league this season, and they apparently paid $64 million for the club. My man, that's a player today in England.
That's one Kai Havertz essentially for an entire French club, which kind of shows you the inflation in English football. But yeah, I mean, as again, we'll reference JJ because he was excellent in our third part. But the club actually finished close to the European spots the year before, had a bit of a regression last year. Mark Keller, president's been in place since 2012. He's been an orchestrator of this entire kind of rebuild that's happened from kind of that rags to riches story that you mentioned earlier. It's one of 6 clubs that have won all 3 major French trophies, including the championship in 1979, the Coupe de France in 51, 66, and 01, and the Coupe de la Ligue in 1964, 97, 2005, and 2019. They have played, they're one of 6 clubs that have played over 2,000 matches in France's top flight, spanning 56 seasons, and they've taken part in 52 European games since 1961, so they fit in great with Chelsea. They've never been in like the consistent top 4, which I think, as far as like well-known French teams, obviously your PSGs, your Marseilles, your Lyons, all those sorts of clubs never really made it there. But despite the fact that they have experienced relegation, they've kind of bounced up. This is a club that has a ton of history and a ton of really interesting geographical history. They were founded as in a part of the German Empire, right? And then, because it's right on the France-German border, or France-Germany border, I should say. And so there's a huge kind of history between those two nations. Obviously, if you know anything about the world wars that took place in the first part of the 20th century, but they were annexed as part of France and are currently a part of the French league, obviously. But there is a ton of cultural implication between both countries where they are, and of course, there's a ton of pride in that region for their culture, as we will learn later. So they've also started an esports team, which is, I feel like a pretty standard part of every club's outfit these days, but they're trying to be on the leading edge. Like we've said, this is a team with a ton of history, a ton of tradition, a club that's won multiple trophies across their history, and is maybe at the precipice of doing something special, a la Brentford, as we find out from Naz's article here, Brandon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's super, like you said, interesting. Of life hasn't been easy for them, and they've had to overcome some stuff, and their fans are super passionate, which we got to see, right? Mm-hmm. In response to it. But while it probably is considered not ideal here are some like just top of the funnel advantages. You're going to get an international dimension now from Strasbourg. Like they're going to have way more resources than they ever had before. When we talk about like the financial differences between the Premier League and in Strasbourg and like how much we bought the club for, their budget, their investment, they are going to see like immediate upgrades day one. I would say, with all due respect them and to Chelsea, they're going to cheat Chelsea things as well, which is great. But the resources, massive. Operations, marketing, sponsorships, valuation, they're going to get there. Hopefully some medical stuff, some scouting, sports science, whatever it is. They talk about the fact that Chelsea and the LA Dodgers and the LA Lakers, right? Now they're tied to them. There is something sexy about that. I would be interested in what the local view of that is, but like the LA franchises in the US are globally known. Like LA is known of Hollywood, therefore Hollywood has taken those sports teams around the world with them, and you'll get to see that. I mean, expanding their 26,000 seater stadium. Hey, just add it to the list, Nick. We're already doing stadium renovations in London. Might as well just take the same team and have
bulk supplies.
Yeah,
let's go.
Have them take a look at our friends over in France as well. And then the biggest thing is, bigger purse, bigger bag. The men's team is going to get more money. The academy team is going to get more money, and the women's team, which they're now bringing in, is going to get more money. And at the end of the day, what do we want as fans? More success. And to be quite blunt, the more money you spend, the more success you tend to have. So,
yeah, and it's also really interesting too, because I think maybe the forgotten player given Chelsea's transfer dealings right now is Christopher Vivell, who Naz notes this is his specialty, right? When you look at where he came from in the Red Bull model, he knows how to create this multi-club model in a way that will make sense and that will be able to share resources effectively, right? From the RB model, there's a ton of expertise there. And so I think that is critical. He's a critical component to this, where maybe some others and Stewart and Winstanley are getting a majority of the either praise or not so much praise at the moment. Vivell is kind of, I think, orchestrating some other types of things that could have bigger impacts for Chelsea and these clubs down the road. And I think the last note, and this is a really important thing, because UEFA just kind of makes up the rules as they go. Not historically a very honest or straightforward organization, UEFA. There is some, I would say regulation around owning multiple clubs in the same competition across Europe. Their mention is, although unlikely that Strasbourg will qualify for Europe, they did almost did a couple of years ago. So let's be very careful. And Chelsea are not in Europe right now. so
who makes it first?
Let's just be very careful about that. It's said that they have a relaxed approach to this sort of kind of multi-club ownership model. And so all of that being said, I mean, Brandon, what are your takes before we get into our interview with Johnathan Johnson, who, again, can't highly recommend enough, following on Twitter? What are your reactions to this as step one in apparently a multi-club model that is being set much quicker than maybe I had even thought?
If there's one thing that these owners cannot be accused of, it's sitting on their hands, one could say. I'm just trying to take it all in. I don't know, right? Am I thrilled with what like Man City have done with like financial doping and things and moving players around? And, I mean, not really. And you just don't know what the intentions and the impact this is going to have on Chelsea. You assume it's good, right? But at the same time, are we going to be farming these clubs for the best talent? Like, is it going to be mutually beneficial, right? Or are we going to kind of be the source of a lot of pain around these smaller developing leagues, or, the ones that just have less money? I think that's where we should naturally be concerned. But I think some fans will understandably say, don't care. Chelsea, number one, that's all I'm worried about. If this helps Chelsea be better, all for it. But I think the owners will probably see that they could have success on multiple continents or multiple countries for sure. And like, what's better than having one successful team is having 5 successful teams. So I'm really just trying to read and pay attention to what's going on so we can see how all of these pieces are going to connect. This is a massive operation. I mean, talk about mergers and acquisitions at the highest level across sporting franchises, across different countries with different rules and regulations. This isn't going to be easy. Nothing that Bully and Igbali have done is easy. So I also want to know, like, how long is it going to take to settle in? I'll have to go back and kind of review the City Football Group and how quickly they did it. I feel like they moved pretty fast. And so maybe it's not as complicated as I'm thinking. It'll probably make more sense of why we have so many sporting and technical and scouting directors now, because they probably were hiring for beyond just Chelsea, and we'll start to see that bigger vision come to fruition. But honestly, Nick, I don't know. I'm just trying to pay attention and see how this plays out, because this is a big play. This is going to have huge implications across a lot of different things. And coming off the season we had last season, I just want Chelsea to get back to greatness, right? And if this helps, great. If it's a distraction, then it's going to suck.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a lot of the reaction to the news on Thursday, from folks that we like and trust. And the reaction was really split. And I think I understand why the sentiment on the negative side exists, right? It's a lot of change happening really fast. And, again, I think the folks who do not want this to happen feel like they might lose, Blueco might lose Chelsea as a priority within, this greater footballing infrastructure. I understand that. And I could see it. I think in a perfect world, the multi-club model would not exist as a tactic for growth and for competition and for an advantage in competition, I should say. If that were, the official stance of UEFA, then this wouldn't happen, really. But it's clear that UEFA is not going to do anything about it. Or if they do something about it, it will be after, all these multi-club models have already been adopted and probably grandfathered in. And so, it's not about necessarily competing in an ideal world. It's about competing in a world that exists and where your rivals are getting stronger by the day, right? City just won the treble. They're not going anywhere. Even if Pep leaves, they have a strong footballing infrastructure in place. They have a multi-club model in place. They're state-backed. It's a hard thing to beat, man. It's a really hard thing to beat. And I think competition and getting advantages where you can is what I see this ownership group doing, even though it was an abysmal first year for the men's first team. I think what you're looking at here with the multi-club model is a way to try and claw some of that ceded territory back. And again, I think your last point here, Brandon, is critical. If it is something that helps not only Chelsea, but all these clubs get better, phenomenal. If it becomes a political distraction, it's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And so I truly hope that Vivell and the Blueco ownership group have a incredibly detailed plan to get the most out of these, the clubs that are eventually part of the model, Strasbourg being the first, and that it runs like fucking clockwork, right? That Strasbourg gets the funding that they need to operate effectively. Their stadium gets rebuilt. Chelsea Stadium gets rebuilt. Our transfers are good. Their scouting is good. Like, all of this stuff is critical. What I like about Strasbourg is they already have an infrastructure in place, right? There's a ton of positives with that club, and they seem like they're well run as it is. So hopefully there won't be a ton of oversight required to keep them on the up and up. And I hope that all the other clubs that are a part of Chelsea's vision for this, whether it be in Portugal or Brazil or, you know, Belgium or, you know, as JJ mentioned, Africa even, I hope that they are of a similar stature, right? That they are well put together, well run, have all the right pieces in place to be successful, because, you know, otherwise I think it's going to be a challenge. So I think it's more about the world that you live in rather than the world that you want, unfortunately.
Yes. All right. Well, we're going to take a break when we get back. Live with JJ, breaking it down from the French angle. Again, a Brit expat living in France, writing about it for CBS. So you're going to want to pay attention. Thank you to sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right. Well, coming out of that break, we've got a special guest here. Johnathan Johnson is joining us from CBS Sports Golazo. We are excited to have you on. You're located in Paris. You've been following this. For us, I would say some pretty big news that the Chelsea ownership group have officially completed the, not signing, but takeover of Strasbourg. And maybe, Johnathan, right away, you can just humble me by telling me how to pronounce Strasbourg's name.
I mean, you're doing a pretty good job. I mean, Strasbourg is pretty much the French way of saying it. So if you wanted to add a little Gallic flair, hopefully that pronunciation should help. But as you guys are going to learn pretty fast, they don't really call the club Strasbourg anyway. It's Racing. So whenever you speak to anybody sort of in and around Alsace, they will definitely be referring to the club as Racing as opposed to Strasbourg itself.
Oh, well, that is the deep cut there. And I think, I don't know, maybe we can just talk about that real quick as we get into it, is like, why would that be? As we are quickly trying to get caught up and learn, it sounds like this is, there's a lot of national pride about this part of France, and like in the footballers and the coming up, right? It's kind of the localized name of, I don't want to say neighborhood maybe, but like the region or the city.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to sort of bear in mind about French football, and it's kind of one of its oddities, but also it makes it kind of a curiosity and kind of attractive in itself at the same time, is that French football doesn't have many sort of like sort of two club cities, which kind of brings those kind of like local rivalries that you guys are used to following English football. I mean, obviously growing up in England as well, being an Aston Villa fan, obviously I've had plenty of experience in it as well, but you don't get as much of that in France. And Strasbourg doesn't really have there isn't a second club in the city. You have some big nearby clubs. There's a rivalry with Metz. There was Mulhouse as well before they experienced financial difficulties under American ownership, which is kind of a recurring theme when Americans get involved in French football. Let's see if this project changes it. But specific to that region, it's actually really interesting at this moment in time. Interesting for a number of reasons. You've got this giant French football that's sort of rebuilt itself in the East over the last sort of 10 to 15 years. Mark Keller has played a massive role in that. And the expectation is that one day, probably, within the next 2 years, Mark Keller will actually head the French Football Federation. So he won't be able to sort of be, at the head of Strasbourg, the club, sort of on a day-to-day basis anymore. And that's actually basically sort of what has, sort of led to this situation where the club had to look for a solution. Yes, we've heard Keller talking publicly, sort of about how through local backing, they'd sort of tapped the extent of their potential in terms of where they could take the club. But also, you have to look at it, and this has been a very pragmatic move from Keller, because Keller has political ambitions and he will become the French Football Federation president one day. Whether that's as soon as the end of 2024 or a little bit further along down the line, given that Diallo now has that mandate up until the end of 2024, we will see. But there's no way in French footballing law that you can be French Football Federation president and president of a club. So that is one of the factors that has kind of fed into Mark Keller needing to find new ownership for the club. Now, Keller, in terms of what he's done in terms of rebuilding Strasbourg, he's now kind of like a local deity, kind of like a godlike figure where, he has not only played for the club, represented France, and obviously flown the flag for the region. He's now also rebuilt its strongest historic club. There's a lot of emotion attached to Strasbourg. I mean, I'm sure that you guys have found out, sort of doing a little bit of homework on the club, that it's extremely well supported. The fan base, the reason why they've sort of been renovating the stadium, or there are plans afoot to renovate the stadium starting very soon, is the fact that the sort of the capacity in terms of selling out, sort of week in, week out, is extremely high there. We're talking like nearly 90% in terms of like regular gates, which is pretty crazy in terms of French football. So have that kind of that sort of loyalty, that sort of emotion, and it all comes back down to this kind of like regional pride aspect. And the Alsace itself, although it's part of something that's called the Grand Est, so the sort of the big East, which is like a mixture of different departments that form sort of one bigger one. We could see a bit of independence for Alsace in the coming years. I'm not going to sort of bore you guys with the French footballing politics right now, but that's something that could definitely be sort of on the cards for the coming years. But Strasbourg, being so close to the German border, the mentality in that region towards football is very different to, the mentality towards football in other regions where it's perhaps not as passionate. There's a lot of debate in French football about who sort of has the most passionate pockets of fans. The Lens fans, for example, are well known across Europe for being, absolutely, mad about their club. PSG's ultras have done a good job of sort of advertising their passion over the years in the Champions League. Nobody needs to introduce a club like Marseille, who have phenomenal support at home in the Stade Velodrome. But Strasbourg, I kind of feel, have always gotten a bit of a raw deal in that they're a very well supported club where sort of flying the flag for that region of France sort of has flown under the radar up until this deal. Obviously, Strasbourg were very close to getting themselves back into Europe a year or two ago. Sadly fell just short, and then really struggled last season to follow that up, and very nearly got relegated. So flirted with it for a little while, but this club is massive. It's very difficult to sort of overstate just how potentially big this club could be.
Yeah, crash course completed. Appreciate that, JJ. I think we're kind of starting this conversation with just the implications, right? Chelsea have clearly decided that the multi-club model is critical to future success, just based on the trends in world football and the fact that your cities and even down to your Brightons of the Premier League are involved in multi-club models. Can you talk about the implications of thinking about Strasbourg as a part of that multi-club model, and what that might mean both for Strasbourg and for Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a difficult job for Chelsea for sure to win the fans over. As you guys will have seen already, they're certainly not happy about the news. But I don't think anyone would be. I don't think anyone wants their club to sort of be bought as part of one of these multi-club ecosystems, I guess, is, sort of what it's called these days. Nobody wants to be part of one of those when they're not going to be at the top of the food chain. Now, in terms of the strategy, sort of why Chelsea, identified France, that's no surprise at all, given sort of France's track record in terms of developing talent. Number of clubs that are equipped with the kind of infrastructure that you need in order to, basically put players of a certain age through a finishing school, which then enables them to be sort of Premier League ready, come over and play a part for the main club, Chelsea. Sort of what it means for Strasbourg. Obviously I've talked already about sort of Keller freeing himself up to potentially leave, sort of by the end of 2024. We'll see if that actually turns out to be the right timeline. It could be that he stays on a little bit longer. But in any case, there had been a feeling for a long time before Chelsea sort of cropped up as a possibility that there needed to be new investments into the club. And that it was getting very difficult for a club like Strasbourg to remain competitive. I mean, you look at sort of what's happened in Ligue 1 the last couple of years, and it really takes something special, something like a Lens, to really have some success, and then sustaining that kind of success, which is something that we already saw was difficult for Strasbourg after flirting with qualifying for Europe. It's impossible to do that without the right financial backing. And now Strasbourg, rightly or wrongly, feel like they found the right, long-term investment in order to sort of give themselves the aspirations that they feel, are worthy of a club like Strasbourg. But, and I'm sure we'll get onto it soon, there's other considerations as well. Strasbourg is a club that was brought back from the brink a number of years ago to the point where, the team wouldn't have been able to play in the stadium had the fans sort of not cleaned the stadium by hand, like picking up like all the trash and like stuff like that, and made it basically playable, for the team. That's how desperate things got. 15 years ago or so. They've come from a long, long way, and basically with sort of the same kind of leadership, at the top of the club all the way through. So they are a real success story, but a success story that sort of knew that it had reached its limits and had to figure out some way to, remain competitive within the current setup of, elite European soccer. They've decided to go with, the offer of, becoming part of this Chelsea umbrella, Blueco, which, if we believe the reports, is going to expand even further in the next couple of weeks. There's been whispers about potential interest in a club in Portugal. I know that there's been suggestions about Rio Ave as well. So, we'll see if that kind of comes to fruition. But it's a really interesting dynamic because, like I said before, Strasbourg, certainly in terms of the fan base, in terms of its regional importance, is a club that really deserves to sort of be front and center of any kind of project. But equally, if we're sort of talking in terms of being like an established, recognized European name, Chelsea are, more established than Strasbourg and play in in a league, in a competition that people are sort of more widely aware of than Ligue 1. So it's difficult to make a case where Strasbourg will be above Chelsea, sort of in terms of the pecking order. So whichever way you slice it, the fans, I think, were always going to interpret this as sort of coming in as part of a multi-club operation where they're not at the top, of that food chain, and that, will probably rile them up for quite some time. They wouldn't be the first fan base to feel like that, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, given that Keller is still on board. The respect, that the fans and the region have for him and what he's done for the club, and also how he sort of handles now being in that situation. Is it going to be one where we see, a bunch of Chelsea talents immediately sort of farmed out on loan? Is it going to be more strategic? Are we going to see sort of maybe like one or two players joining like that, with a specific idea of how long they spend at the club and sort of how much they would need to develop in order to go back to Chelsea and challenge to be in the first team, and also, what it would kind of mean in terms of the investment through Blueco into Strasbourg in order to make them more competitive. There's been some reports in recent days since the news that Strasbourg are now looking at potentially having a budget of around 25 million for the coming season. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And I think the fact that Keller is on board means that the fans, I'm not going to say they'll have to be better behaved than they would be if he, just completely gone and said, bye-bye and, here's your new owners kind of thing. But I think it kind of tempers the reaction that there might have been from the Strasbourg fans.
Can we just quickly touch on that? Because obviously we saw the protests and everything like that. And I think it's a fair enough reaction. Change is scary. And, clearly, as you've referenced, there's a lot of pride, not only in the club, but in the region for what Strasbourg has accomplished under Mark Keller. What do you think that Blueco and I guess by proxy Chelsea need to do to win over the supporters at this time? Right, it's kind of a critical juncture. As you mentioned, there is investment coming into the club, which should be a good thing, right? And hopefully increase competition, the potential for players to come in as well. Thoughts on what Blueco could do to help make this an easier transition?
I mean, I think one thing that's already quite important, and it'll be important to the region as well as the fan base, is the fact that with Keller on board, there won't be sort of any getting out of sort of the renovation that the stadium needs. I mean, we're talking about a stadium that hasn't been renovated in decades. In fact, it's not even just the stadium we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about the infrastructure overall. We're talking about the training facilities, the youth facilities as well. All of that is going to receive this much needed boost that basically, Keller and the local government have been preparing now for some time. And I think that Blueco coming on board and being okay with that, that's already a sort of a strong indication. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that it's kind of like an olive branch offering, but it's a show that Strasbourg as a club is going to get something meaningful and substantial out of this potential link. Because when people think about sort of satellite clubs and links, they just assume it's literally just going to be sort of players coming from Chelsea, spending a bit of time raising their game a bit with Strasbourg and then going back and playing for Chelsea. And I think there's more to it than that. And the fact that the renovation didn't have to be put onto the back burner, during the talks is a good indication that, this is potentially something, that's at least sort of medium to long term, as opposed to, potentially looking at short-term gains. And certainly if we sort of judge from the narrative that we've heard on the Chelsea side since, the takeover, it's going to be part of sort of a bigger plan. We're not just going to see one club in this sort of multi-club model. There's going to be sort of 3, 4 at some point very near in the future, and it'll be interesting to know sort of where Strasbourg figure in terms of that, because for me it's very difficult to imagine them being anything less than, say, the second club in a multi-club operation. And with all due respect, any deals that might be found in Portugal in the coming months, I think there's only a handful of Portuguese clubs that could really be sort of considered as kind of being, almost like superior to Strasbourg, both in terms of, the reputation of those clubs, but also in terms of the sort of quality, of the game time that any players will potentially get in Ligue 1. Obviously, as a Ligue 1 expert and somebody who's passionate about French football, I'd be very biased in saying that I think, Ligue 1 is the place to be when developing talent. But it's not, doesn't matter, what I think. It's the track record that Ligue 1 has in terms of developing, the sort of talent that Chelsea are going to be looking to try and develop, with this link in the coming years. So I do think that the renovation of the infrastructure is sort of as important as what could come on the pitch in the next couple of months, because that, at the end of the day, is what the fans will be able to sort of attach themselves to and say, that's sort of what we've got to look forward to, in the future. There's going to be more spaces for fans to come in to watch, and there's going to be a greater chance of us being competitive and finally getting to Europe, which, came so close just a year ago.
Well, obviously a big part of this is, I think you talked about how Chelsea could potentially, bring some players over, but it goes the other way as well. And I think one of the strategic alliance side of it, and I'm sure from the ownership group just in general, is helping to get players maybe outside of England into France, which, Brexit is a very obvious issue for the Premier League teams. Yep. But with Ligue 1, they have the Cotonou agreement, right, where you can get players in from 16 Caribbean countries, 40 African countries, and 15 countries in the Pacific with pretty much little to no resistance. And I guess if you can kind of help us understand that a little bit, because I think that'll probably be a big flow, is you try to bring in young players, develop them probably in Strasbourg, and then move on to other players, whether it's revenue generating or to Chelsea. I feel like this is probably a big part of the strategy, which I put in quotations.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think you can actually sort of break it down into sort of more basic terms. Obviously large swathes of Africa are French speaking, and traditionally Ligue 1 has been, a perfect sort of, training ground / finishing school for a lot of these players, where they come to Ligue 1 and get their sort of first taste of Europe and then end up moving on to some of the bigger sort of elite names. And obviously, Chelsea, based on, what they've achieved over the last couple of decades now, are in that same bracket, and I think there's a lot of, clubs with or without, a parent club like Chelsea that, look to try and tap into, certainly French-speaking Africa, because you've got a lot of players as well who can qualify as dual nationality, so they can easily get themselves to Europe. It's just a question of their talent cropping up on the radar and then being brought in by the right club and nurtured. I mean, you've got some very good examples, of that in this current Strasbourg squad. You've got the likes of Habib Diarra, for example, who's really burst on the scene towards the end of last season. Came in from Senegal and now, is suddenly being looked at by a number of bigger clubs, not just in France, but across Europe as well. And I think as well, somebody like a Datro Fofana, had Strasbourg sort of had the kind of budget that they've got available to them now since the takeover. He's the kind of talent that they would have probably looked at trying to bring over, and maybe he still ends up, going to Strasbourg at some point on loan. It's, to me, certainly he'd be sort of like one of the first names it would be logical to explore, potentially, sorting out a loan deal for. But I think sort of long term, now having Strasbourg in place, it means that, Chelsea, in terms of their scouting and their talent identification, they can look more aggressively towards Africa, knowing that they have a place where they can bring in the players, sort of in an immediate sense, sort of build them up over, potentially over a couple of years before looking at trying to bring them in for Chelsea. And also, I think as well, even if, there wasn't sort of all of the kind of red tape to get around in the Premier League, jumping from, say, for example, coming from a different continent, straight into the Premier League, that's a very, very difficult jump to make. Coming to somewhere like Ligue 1, I think it's less harsh on the players, and it gives them a better shot at developing. So I think, certainly we can expect to, see Chelsea looking creatively towards French-speaking Africa in the short to medium term, and potentially, who knows, maybe one of the multi-clubs, that eventually gets added to this umbrella under Blueco, is an African powerhouse where there's an obvious, sort of route to Chelsea, where you can go from that club to Strasbourg to Chelsea sort of over the course of, say, 3 to 5 years, which would be ideal for developing talent, say, from the age of sort of 16 to 21.
You mentioned Diarra earlier, another one of the Golden Boy nominees as Decore as well. Do you think that there are any players at Strasbourg that are potentially pipeline ready for the Premier League, let's say in 3 years?
I mean, if we're talking Premier League ready, I think there's a difference between being Premier League ready and sort of ready for what Chelsea's project aspires to be, because we all know that Chelsea next season, out of Europe under a new manager, the expectation will be to sort of get back into the Champions League as quickly as possible, and ultimately to sort of get back into a position, to aspire to challenge for the league title. So in terms of sort of coming in and playing an immediate role, I like Jean-Luc Bellegarde a lot. I don't think, though, necessarily he'd be the best fit for Chelsea. Certainly not in terms of the players who've been brought in, some of the transfer targets that are being mentioned at the moment. But do I think that he could play in the Premier League in the future? For sure. I mean, I think Diarra, given where he is at this moment in time in terms of his development, Chelsea coming in now with this deal, or Blueco coming in now with this deal, it actually comes at a really critical juncture, because suddenly Strasbourg can keep hold of him, and potentially he could develop in the next year or so into a talent that, could be of interest to Chelsea. He has that kind of potential. I mean, it's also interesting as well, because it gives Strasbourg suddenly the opportunity to maybe keep hold of players who might not be an obvious fit for Chelsea in terms of like their age profile, for example, but somebody like a Jiku, the captain whose contract is ending and now suddenly has this new project in front of him, which could lead him to see Strasbourg in a whole different light. He was expected to move on last summer, didn't happen. He suddenly could, look at staying as well. So there's a lot of, sort of potential for Strasbourg to suddenly keep hold of their existing talents. Some of those could be of interest to Chelsea in the next couple of years because there's a number of very talented kids coming through the academy as well. And some of those, could maybe be of interest to Strasbourg for the next couple of years before potentially being sold on, and that way, sort of being strengthened in terms of being able to offer a more lucrative contract and keeping those talents under lock and key enables them to cash in better in the future, because Strasbourg for the last couple of years is a team that has had to get used to working on a really limited budget. They've done a lot of loan transfer dealings. You look at some of the signings they've made from my club Villa, Morgan Sanson, for example. Whether or not he gets turned into a permanent signing now, we'll have to wait and see. But, it's been a couple of really, really difficult years in terms of really looking and trying to do smart business and acquire top talent at, knockdown prices. And, now they will be able to strengthen, with a little bit more sort of comfort, in financial terms, which, I think is, it's going to be, obviously it's good news. It's also going to be challenging because as soon as clubs know, especially in Ligue 1, that there's a club with a little bit of money, suddenly the asking price for a lot of these players that could be on their radar, goes up.
I did see that. I was looking kind of at some of the news around Strasbourg just to understand where they're at. And there was an article that says they've been given 25 million transfer budget following the takeover. That seems wildly low to us in our inflated vision and being at Chelsea. Is that roughly kind of like what they operate on, or is this higher or lower? Like, what is the median here?
That's much higher than Strasbourg have been, operating on in recent years. That's assuming that the reported numbers are correct.
Sure.
We have to kind of assume that it's close to the mark, but maybe not quite, 100% accurate. But in terms of the bigger picture, you only really have sort of the top, 3 to 4 clubs who are capable of, spending that kind of money in a transfer window. That's no guarantee that they always do either. The club that you can guarantee will always spend at least that much, if not sort of 2, 3, 4 times that, is PSG. Marseille, you will get them spending those sorts of sums, but they'll also be bringing in a lot in terms of the players that they're selling. Monaco are also another, club that, buys well, but also, sells, very well as well. So, that sort of leaves only a handful of other clubs. Rennes, for example, have been, quite active on the transfer front the last couple of years. Nice as well, another sort of moneyed club who are, in a bit of a difficult situation at the moment for takeover reasons of a different nature. And, that's kind of pretty much it. I think you can expect that Lens, will also probably be competitive this summer, but, there's very few clubs outside of those that I've just mentioned who will be able to sort of compete with Strasbourg now in terms of domestic-based talent, and also some of those names that a number of French clubs are looking at, from abroad to potentially bring to France.
Last question for you, and I definitely appreciate your time, JJ. I think the larger picture for the women's team is also interesting. It was reported that Blueco has acquired not only the kind of the infrastructure on the men's side from a footballing perspective, but also the women's side. That this is a big priority for Clear Lake as it pertains to Chelsea as well, where there's been a ton of investment in the women's team so far, with more to come. Do you have any idea what the acquisition could mean for the Strasbourg women's team and what that might look like in the future for them?
Oh, it's potentially huge. You've got a couple of really sort of interesting tidbits that are kind of connected to the women's team. One, Sabrina Keller, Mark Keller's wife, is very, very influential in terms of the women's game. So obviously, you would assume that with Mark Keller still, staying on board for the foreseeable future, that she will as well, which is a big boon. And also it's an interesting time to be sort of potentially getting involved in women's football over here in France, with the move to finally professionalize the top division of women's football, which incidentally is now, something that's being led by Jean-Michel Aulas, who was recently kicked out of Lyon by John Textor, another American who's come into the French footballing landscape this last year or so. So I think it's certainly, when you look at it from sort of the women's footballing perspective, it's very shrewd, because it's sort of getting in just before kind of like the big boom. And something else I think as well that maybe has flown a bit under the radar with regards to Strasbourg as a whole is that the news cycle for TV rights, both domestically and internationally, will start this coming September. Now, it's probably not going to be as high as it was a few years ago before the big crash that was brought on by COVID-19 and the season being ended too early. But there is an expectation that the next TV deal that's put in place is a lot more lucrative. So the chances are that, sort of in terms of Blueco pumping money into the club, both for the men's and women's side, the investment into Strasbourg will probably become, I'm not going to say sort of self-sustainable, but there will be a lot more money that's suddenly coming into the club, say in a year's time, like this time next year when the new TV deal kicks in, which was also probably part of the thinking in order to get in now, and sort of have that secured and then sort of build for the future, knowing that there will be, this sort of new boost, in potential revenue coming their way. Because, you look at the deal that's been put in place by the LFP and the CBC deal, where they've created this commercial vehicle, and it's difficult to feel like, the French football is not going to develop in leaps and bounds sort of the next sort of 5 to 10 years. So, I certainly think in terms of identifying an opportunity, both for a men's and women's team in a league that could grow, hugely in the coming years, Strasbourg sort of ticks all of those boxes.
All right, last one for you, and this is more of a culture question. Let's pretend that there are a bunch of Chelsea fans who are going to make a bit of a pilgrimage over to Strasbourg. What is one place that they should go and explore within what looks like a beautiful, picturesque town?
Well, the one thing that they actually really have to go for, and I guess that would be assuming that the guys doing this so-called pilgrimage, the really sort of hardcore of the hardcore, and that's to go during the winter, where Strasbourg has one of the most famous winter markets. I definitely think you have to go at that time of year. It is picturesque. It is very, very unique. Also very important, sort of in terms of the European map. You've got the political seat exists in Strasbourg as well. And no visit to Alsace would be complete without, a beer and a pretzel. So, guys, definitely got to jump in on that at some point if you get the opportunity. It's a fantastic place to go, and the atmosphere at the stadium, especially sort of when it's in full flow, is phenomenal. It's one of the best fan bases in France. Difficult to talk highly enough about, sort of the fan culture in and around the club, and certainly a weekend in Strasbourg will not disappoint anyone who's looking to make such a trip.
Awesome. Well, look, I really appreciate your time and helping us stay as educated as we can be about this club and the interesting kind of future that's kind of coming up. Johnathan Johnson, where can people find you and your reporting on Twitter and elsewhere?
Thanks a lot for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure, and hopefully chat with you again at some point soon when, we've had the first couple of months of Blueco ownership at Strasbourg. And for anyone who's interested in sort of keeping up on that and how it's developing over the summer, both in terms of transfers and potential goings on at the club, best place to find all of my stuff is on Twitter. So at @JON_Legosic. And there you'll be able to find all my different bits and pieces for CBS and other outlets. And now that we've done this interview, I'll try and make sure that the fan base remains fed in terms of the sort of rumors and the happenings at Strasbourg as well.
Wonderful.
Super fair. Very excited. And for everybody else, a link will be in the description as always. Quite a good follow. So anyways, more to come with, I guess, everything Blueco and whatever it is. So again, thank you to Johnathan. We got more stuff coming at you here in a second. All right. So huge thank you to JJ for just dropping so much knowledge and information on us. I mean, there's so much, Nick, in there that I mean, this is coming so fast. Like, we don't have time to research all these different clubs. And at the end of the day, we would miss things. So to have someone who just is so well connected to even the larger landscape of Ligue 1 was brilliant. So link in the description to follow him. Like I said, well worth it. More to come from him throughout the season. But yeah, fantastic.
Oh man, yeah, definitely got a crash course in French football from JJ, and really appreciate him. Obviously, we know that Chelsea aren't done, right? I think to close this episode out, NAS reports that clubs in Belgium, Brazil, Portugal are all on Chelsea's radar. JJ mentioned a club, potentially in Africa, stuff like that. So this is a step one, Brandon, and what is going to be an adventure for the Blueco ownership group model thing that they're putting together. And I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, but I think the sooner that these things can be done and the operationalizing of those things can begin, the better. As far as I'm concerned, because it's going to take some time to get this machine fully operational in the way that we will need it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, as I kind of said it before the first ad break, I'm just here to listen and talk to people who have a little bit more information, just try to piece it all together. There's no way we could possibly know what they're doing in the ownership group, what their total plans are, as much as they have shared it, but This reeks of ambition, right? This reeks of playing the game at a higher level. We have to compete with some pretty big hitters, right? When Abramovich came to Chelsea, he was the big hitter. Now there are a lot of big hitters. I mean, United looking at potentially selling, Liverpool dipped the toe in the water. Even, some of those extremely wealthy people aren't sure they want to compete financially at this level that it takes to be successful. So as we've seen the new ownership group come in and exploit some loopholes, right? This is another way they're going to try to play the game at a higher level that doesn't cost as much as maybe what the PIF or other state-backed organizations are able to just pile tons of cash. That's not the plan anymore. And so this is them just trying to be as competitive as possible in an ever-changing world. So let's just continue to monitor and see what goes on, Nick. It's going to be, it's just never been boring with Bully, right? Boring Bully was not his nickname as a kid growing up, clearly.
No. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see. I love the fact that they were blue. Old Strasbourg. So
I love their colors.
It's beautiful. Their logo, their club crest, I should say, is amazing. Incredibly French and well designed, as French fashion typically is. But look, we are excited? Question mark. Figuring out how this whole thing's gonna work. But
heavily interested.
If you want to see about the most picturesque city that you could imagine in Europe, go on and Google some Strasbourg images, and I think we may try and take up old JJ on his winter Christmas markets idea for a Chelsea Strasbourg doubleheader trip, because it looks incredible, to be fair.
Yeah, I put a little Twitter thread out there about the city and kind of what it's known for, and it's wine, fruit juices, and mineral waters, picturesque architecture, and you're just like, all right, that's enough to kind of get us there.
Sold.
Yeah. Dry Rieslings, famous for its beer, sauerkraut with the German, influence as well. They've got a traditional pizza without tomatoes, but covered with cheese, cream, mushrooms, and local ham. Book it now. London is blue. London to Strasbourg happening in a season coming close to you. But we're interested. We're just trying to take it in. We will continue to cover it. If there are people we need to talk to, plug us. Let us know. We're just here to gather information and put it out there. But anyways, big week of content. Hope you've been enjoying it. Continue to drop the 5-star reviews. Continue to subscribe on YouTube. Even if you don't watch it, just support us there. there, so it grows the numbers. Road to 25K. And if you want a group of Chelsea fans, Discord, right? Patreon.com/London Blue Pod. We'll get you there. Anyways, that's going to wrap us up. Until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.